Hey guys, Dan here. Welcome to another Dan Reviews It Roseanne season review. And we've been going through them now along with the new episodes. And we're up to season 4 now. This is another pivotal season in Roseanne. Still, a ratings powerhouse at this point. A lot is going on. Let's see. First of all, let's talk about Roseanne and Dan. The Lanford Custom Cycle Shop is up and running. In the very last episode of Season 3, we saw that was sort of a dream of Dan and their friend Ziggy's. So in Season 4, we get it up and running. Roseanne is helping out there from time to time as well. But she's also got her job at Rod Bell's coffee shop, diner, whatever you want to call it. And so we see her interacting with Bonnie a lot, it's just a character I love. I'm glad that she stuck around after the diner closes, which it does at the very end of this season. So really just a one-season job yet again here for Roseanne. But, Martin Mull, I guess a season and a half, because I guess she got it in the middle of last season. But anyway, Martin Mull is the boss. I'm glad he sticks around as well after the closing of the shop. There's a lot of great camaraderie with the three of them, a lot of good back and forth, and a lot of really good plot lines surrounding Rod Bell's, like the lie detector test, some of the stuff with her and the kids, and they do a commercial which is funny. So there's a lot of good Rod Bell stuff. Becky and Mark are in full swing here. Dan hires Mark at the bike shop even to kind of give him a little bit of an upper hand if he is going to be dating Becky. They break up, and we have one of the great episodes of the season that I'm going to talk about where we see Dean, her new, one-off boyfriend, although he does appear, I think, 2 seasons later in an episode, but, one-off for now anyway. But Darlene, let's get to her. My kindred spirit here on this show. This is when we finally meet David. So her and David have a few plot lines closer toward the end of the season, but we meet him and we learn a little bit about him. So that's sort of the rundown of the season. Jackie is now a truck driver. She's another one who sort of goes through a different job every season. She is a truck driver now. We don't get too much about that yet. There is a road trip that she and Roseanne take to go visit their dad's mistress, and they take Jackie's truck because she's going to that state anyway. So there is a little bit of a plot line, but we don't dwell too much on the Jackie stuff. And then DJ's just DJ. His moment to shine comes at the end of the season when he wins the spelling bee. So not a ton there. And we see a little more with the neighbors as well, the Bowmans, who end up moving out closer towards the end of the season. So action-packed season, a lot of stuff going on, a lot of great plot lines started and some finished as well. So how does it stack up? I would say on the whole it is almost as good as season 3. It is not quite up to that level, but it is super, super close. There are, let's see, I count the Vegas 2-parter as one episode, because it basically is. So that gets a B, but I just put that in one episode. So there's 3 Bs total. So let's talk about those. Let's talk about the worst of the season first. Why not? So the Vegas episode, I don't necessarily mind when a show goes on location. In fact, the Friends Vegas episodes are pretty funny, but the issue here is its main focal point is Roseanne and Dan and Arnie and Nancy, who I've said before, I sort of have a love-hate relationship with Tom Arnold on this show. I think he got better as I got older in these reruns, but I never really liked the Arnie-Nancy plot. I like Arnie better when he's on his own, and I like Nancy better in later seasons. I just, they were doomed to fail. Their love is gross, which I know is one of the jokes, but, on a show where I love the kids and Jackie just as much as Roseanne and Dan, we sort of really give them the short shrift on these 2 episodes, and the real Wayne Newton appears. That's fun. I will give them that, but it's still, I would say, one of the worst of the season. So it gets a B. Again, nothing this season is below a B, so it's not like there's any bad episodes, but just these are sort of the worst of them. Bowling is another one. It's just kind of a filler episode. It's bowling. With Dan and Arnie on a team, and Chuck and some of their friends, and they're going against these other people. And then we see Bonnie, and her boyfriend in the show is played by David Crosby. I don't know if they had a romantic thing going on. I know David Crosby, sort of got around. He ended up giving his sperm to Melissa Etheridge, and I think a couple other people even. But anyway, Bonnie is a singer in real life, the actress that plays her. So, I don't know if they really had something going on. But they have a song at the end, which is nice. I don't mind hearing them sing. But just the episode's such a filler, not really a lot going on. The only real significant part about that episode is it is the premiere of David, who is called Kevin in this episode. And then when he comes back a couple episodes later, he's David. They've, to my knowledge, never explained why he was Kevin and now he's David. So that was a little weird, but that was the episode where he made his debut. So that's at least interesting for that. And then the other one is Deliverance. It's a Crystal heavy episode. Never my favorite character. And some of the pregnancy plots have been okay this season. She's in this episode flipping out, at Dan for not doing enough around the house. Basically taking stuff out on him that she really should be on his father, who she's married to now. But Roseanne and Bonnie get in a fight. And so her and Jackie missed the delivery because they took the phone. Roseanne took the phone off the hook, so whatever. To be honest, actually, I guess it's not that bad. Maybe it's a B+. I don't know. Now that I'm thinking about some of the subplots, but whatever. It's still not one of my favorites of the season, so we'll leave it, I guess, with a B for now. And then most of the episodes I would say get A- or B+. There's more A- than last season. Not quite as many B+, but there's also not as many A's. But there's still 2 A+, which is Darlene Fades to Black. I've said many times that Darlene and I were kindred spirits. She was a little bit, just slightly ahead of the curve on her depression phase. Mine would come about a year later. I came out in high school in 10th grade, and that was sort of when, a little depressing. She's in 9th grade in this season and goes through her phase. So, but certainly, I don't know if I want to say it was inspiration for my depression phase, but I think it helped me through it in some ways, knowing that, well, hey, I know Darlene's a fake character, but I'm not the only one that this is happening to. So that helped. But the episode where she first really is depressed and Roseanne and Dan don't know what to do about it, it's executed brilliantly. It really captures the teenage angst, and spirit of depression, especially when you've got a sister who is very popular and an overachiever and all of this. My older brother was not super popular, but he always got A's, and I got B's and C's. So it's like I still had a little bit of that going, with my own family. So that one is just a great episode. That gets an A+. And then the other one is Breaking Up is Hard to Do. And this is where we meet Dean. Becky and Mark are on a break, and she decides to start getting a move on with her life. And so she dates this guy Dean on the football team. Dan and him bond instantly. And then once he leaves, Jackie and Roseanne inform Dan that he is just the transition guy, dead before he hit the door, as Jackie said. So that Dan's whole thing in that. John Goodman is really, really, I would say, this is maybe the season where he outshines everybody. I mean, John Goodman is so good in this season. Between his stuff with Becky and his stuff with Mark, he has a great episode with Roseanne's mom, Beverly, where she's kind of taking care of the kids, because Roseanne throws her back out, so he's got a good back and forth with her. I mean, you could pinpoint any person in the entire series, and in this season, John Goodman has a really great scene with him or her. So, the true unsung hero, I think, of Roseanne anyway, just because he's so natural and so flawless. It just is oozing out of him. But I think for this season specifically, he really, really is finding that Dan character and maximizing it. And I think the writers, did a great job writing for him as well. But anyway, so that's an A+ too. That's one of my favorites of the whole series. I love that. But there's some A's too. I mean, let's talk about some of those. Tolerate Thy Neighbor. It's another great Bowman episode. Where they are having a fight. Is that the one where they get robbed? Or was that God? The episode where they get robbed is great. I think that was actually last season. It's hard watching all of these, back to back, because it's like you sort of do lose track of which season was which. That's the one. Yeah, that is the one where they're robbed. God, is that a funny one? And she comes to Rod Bell's and tries to make amends a little bit because they want their kids to be friends, sort of like they did in the previous season episode. But boy, I mean, she just goes off on Roseanne, calls her stupid and this and that, and then the cop comes over and he's buddies with Roseanne and Dan, so it's like, and Jackie comes in. That's a great episode. So that gets an A. This Old House gets an A as well. That's the one where we discover Roseanne and Jackie's past. They, like I said, in one of the earlier episodes of the season, they go on a road trip to see the mistress of their dad. But here we learn that they go visit their old house because it's about to get torn down. And we learn that, they got beat as children, which, rears its head again. So far, we don't really know much about their dad. Like, he comes over and brings gifts to the kids. But it wasn't until this season, I believe it is the Thanksgiving episode, which is why he's not at Thanksgiving, which I gave an A- to, where we find out he's been cheating on Beverly for a couple of years. And then later in the season, we find out, no, it's 2 decades he's been cheating on her, not 2 years. So that is a really poignant episode. But in addition, that episode really is where we learn that Darlene and David have this great bond. We learn about their comics and all that, and they went to Chicago. They skipped school and went to Chicago, so they get in trouble for that. I mean, we don't really see what trouble David gets into, but Darlene certainly gets into a lot of trouble with it. So that is another top-notch one for the season. That one gets an A. What else? Oh, and then Lies also gets an A. And there's a great talk. Here's another great John Goodman scene. Him and Darlene have a good talk about boys, essentially, and about is it possible to be friends with them, and what can you do? Because she wants to be just friends with David, and he wants a lot more than that. And so, so there's a really good moment, once again with John Goodman and Sarah Gilbert. But that whole episode, again, is great. God, does that ring true to high school? Certainly my high school experience. So another one, I know I'm tearing up a little bit. Roseanne does that, what can I say? But the other things I wanted to mention in this season, other than the best and the worst episodes. So we've got, we realize Leon is gay towards the end of last season, and we develop a few plot lines with that this season. A great joke when they're playing poker early on. In the Jackie Becomes a Trucker episode, where the guys in poker learn that he's gay, and it gets sort of weird, and I knew a guy from Chicago named Bill. He was gay. Maybe you know him, and so that kind of rang true a little bit to my gay experience. Again, I came out a year after this season aired, but it was almost like, oh, well, if you knew somebody remotely that was gay, then they were okay with it. It's kind of like, oh, I have a black friend, so I'm not racist, that whole kind of thing. So that was interesting. This isn't like a major plot in the season, but I did write down about how Darlene does not want to do a Christopher Columbus project because he was a slave trader. That was the first I ever heard of that. I mean, that is a like groundbreaking back in the day statement, and it's something we're still dealing with, almost 30 years later. It's like, why are we celebrating Columbus Day? And that was the first I ever had heard of that back then. Kansas City, Here We Come. I gave it an A-, but a good bonding moment for Dan and Mark. Again, John Goodman, has a nice bonding moment. They go down to the grocery store where Becky works to beat up her boss. Mark gets there earlier, so they have a little, sort of almost a pissing contest about it. And Dan's a little hurt, that Mark got there first. The bingo episode, it's sort of a filler, but it's a lot of fun with Edie McClurg. One of my favorite lines in the entire series is where Roseanne throws her back out and she yells, "I can't get up and I don't have one of those things." I think that is a joke that would be lost on a generation now watching it. But back in the day, of course, the Life Alert commercials, "I've fallen and I can't get up," huge joke back in the day. So that's always been one of my favorite lines. And you know what? In the Breaking Up is Hard to Do episode, I forgot to mention this. That's I gave it an A+. One of the things that really pushes it over the edge for me is this really good, real conversation that is sort of not having anything to do with the episode. We're waiting in the episode for Dean to come over, and instead, most shows would just have a person. Someone exits the room. Okay, well, now we have nothing to have these characters do or say, so let's have Dean enter. But there's a good, minute and a half period between there where Roseanne and Jackie are just talking, and Jackie's like, "Hey, how's your back? Are you doing your exercises?" Roseanne's like, "Oh, well, how's your love life?" Trying to kind of get back at her for, being a little bit of a stickler on her back exercise. It's such a real moment. And that specific moment was the one that made me sort of take notice of that even back then in the day when I first watched it. I thought that's really cool that they have these two characters just having kind of BS chat for a minute about their lives while we wait for the next thing to happen. I thought that was a very real moment, so I love that. That's really about it, I guess. That's all I kind of wrote in the sidelines for some of these episodes. There's an alien subplot with Arnie. That's stupid. This is where Roseanne sort of starts to go a little bit off the rails of reality. I touched on this in the last season when they went to do their taxes, and every time somebody said the word audit, they had the dun dun dun, which it just always seemed hokey to me. It's why that episode got a low grade for me last season. But this is where they start to go a little bit off the rails. But thus far, it's only in the post-credit scenes. He writes Nancy a letter that he was abducted by aliens, but we don't, of course, believe any of that. And then in the end credit scene, we see, quote unquote, that yes, okay, he was abducted by aliens, apparently. So it's something that is definitely corny. It veers very far off of the Roseanne track, but we've seen that before in post-credit sequences in this season. We see Dean pleading for his character to continue, which is hilarious. That's a great end credit sequence. And then there's one also where Tom Arnold comes up to John Goodman backstage and is like, "Hey, I was locked in my trailer somehow, haha, somehow. But did you and Roseanne do what we talked about, in your big kissing scene?" And John Goodman says, "Oh yeah, we shook hands. I think it's better that way too, whatever." But obviously, so these are things that aren't part of the episode. So I think they're sort of setting the stage for, okay, the closing credit sequence isn't necessarily indicative of anything in reality. It's just sort of a fantasy or just sort of a one-off joke. So let's not take that too seriously. So, all right, I can see that for just the end credit sequence. But then, in later seasons, it obviously veers into their stories as well during the episode. So that's it for the season. It's, like I said, just a hair under the last season, but because it does have a lot of B pluses and A minuses and fewer A's, I leave this season with an A minus. Another really solid one though, and like I said, a lot of pivotal episodes here, especially with the Becky, Mark, and the Darlene and David stuff. So another good one to check out. If I remember correctly, it's still good, like really, really, really good for another like season or two, and then it sort of starts to slide a little bit, as you would expect, in a 6th or 7th season. So, but for now, another great one, an A minus in the books. So thank you for watching, and this week there is no new episode on ABC, so I'll be back with another season review before I am back with another new episode review. So look for that. The last episode review I did was crazy. It got 3,500 views and still counting, which, I mean, nothing on my channel has even gotten, like 1/10 of that. So, I mean, it's incredible. So, I appreciate the Roseanne love and keep it going. And I've gotten a lot of subscribers lately, but if you have still not subscribed, I would love to have you aboard. So, that's it. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.